Welcome to Cody Yellowstone Uncovered, a podcast dedicated to exploring the best of Wyoming's Yellowstone country. Ready? Let's go.
Welcome back to Cody Yellowstone Uncovered. We've got a great episode for you today.
We really do. It is just a fascinating story to get into.
It is. You know, usually when we talk about a monumental historical figure, there is this very clear sense of closure. Like the hero rides off into the sunset, the curtain falls, and their story is neatly wrapped up with a definitive final chapter.
But then you look at William F. Cody.
Right. Known to the entire world as Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, he lived this incredibly expansive life. I mean, he eventually founded the amazing town of Cody, Wyoming.
He really did. But his final chapter, it wasn't an ending at all. It was actually the beginning of a century-old puzzle.
It really was.
Because Buffalo Bill, who was, the ultimate showman, he managed to leave behind one towering legacy and somehow two completely different graves.
It is basically a phenomenal historical magic trick. I mean, most legends only get one final resting place.
Yeah, but Buffalo Bill somehow became the center of this spectacular, enduring mystery that historians and locals are still debating today.
Absolutely.
And that is our mission for you today. We are exploring a midnight mortuary caper, an unlucky look-alike ranch hand, a massive municipal cover-up, and really the unbreakable bonds of Western friendship.
It is quite the list.
It really is. We are going to look at the logistics, the motives, and just the sheer audacity of this entire operation to answer one fascinating question. Where is Buffalo Bill really buried?
I love it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to fully grasp how this grand mystery unfolded, we have to start with the logistical realities of his final days. You're looking at early January of 1917.
Yeah, and at this point, Buffalo Bill is an absolute global icon. I mean, everybody knows him, but his physical health is really failing.
Right.
So he travels to Glenwood Springs, Colorado. He is hoping the restorative waters there and a visit to a specialist will kind of help him out.
But unfortunately, the medical reality is quite serious.
It is. He is told that his kidneys are failing, and he likely has less than 2 weeks left.
Wow, just 2 weeks.
Yeah. But true to his nature, he doesn't just stop.
Of course not. He pushes forward to Denver to spend his remaining time with his sister, May.
Right.
And it is there, on January 10th, 1917, surrounded by his family, that he passes away.
But immediately after his passing, this very practical geographical challenge comes up.
Right, because it is the middle of January in Colorado.
Exactly. The ground is completely frozen solid.
And just to put that into perspective for you, in 1917, you didn't have modern excavators that could just easily chew through frozen earth.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Digging a grave in the Rocky Mountain winter required pickaxes.
Yeah.
And sometimes they even had to use small, localized uses of dynamite.
Wait, really? Dynamite?
Yeah, which obviously wasn't considered respectful or frankly practical for a cemetery.
No, of course not. So his devoted wife, Louisa, is essentially trapped by the weather. She has to keep his remains at Ollinger's mortuary in Denver. They place him in a cold receiving vault, which was pretty standard practice back then.
Yeah, just waiting for the spring thaw to soften the ground up.
But this waiting period is compounded by another detail.
Right.
The man who brought the Wild West to the capitals of Europe, who was arguably the most famous person on the entire planet, was completely broke.
It is a stunning contrast, honestly. You have this massive global fame, yet incredibly fragile financial realities.
I always compare it to like a modern-day tech founder.
Oh, that is an interesting way to look at it.
Right, like someone who builds a revolutionary global platform. They change the way the world works.
Yeah.
But instead of focusing on their own profit margins, they have these massive capital burn rates.
Because they make overly generous investments.
Exactly. They invest in their friends, their community, and these grand idealistic projects.
And at the end of the day, their cultural impact is totally immeasurable, but their bank accounts are just empty.
Right. Buffalo Bill funded massive irrigation projects. He invested in kind of dubious mining operations just to help out his friends, and he carried the immense overhead of a global touring show.
He really just gave it all away.
He did.
What's fascinating here is how that specific combination of factors, the frozen ground necessitating a delay, and the family's financial vulnerability, created a really unique window of opportunity for opportunistic city officials in Denver to kind of step in.
Because Louisa is stuck in Denver, she is dealing with the estate's massive debts, and she is presented with an offer that she realistically just cannot refuse.
Right. representatives from the Denver Post newspaper, along with officials from the city of Denver, they approach Louisa with an astounding proposition.
And it is a lot of money.
It is. They offer her $10,000 from the newspaper and $10,000 from the city.
Wow.
That is $20,000 total, which translates to nearly $500,000 today.
That is huge.
Yeah, but only if she agrees to bury Buffalo Bill near Denver, specifically on Lookout Mountain.
Honestly, I have to push back on the ethics of this a little bit.
I can see why.
I mean, imagine this happening today. Imagine a major metropolis approaching the widow of a beloved public figure, someone whose entire identity is tied to a specific hometown.
Yeah, that would not go over well.
Right. And the city just says, hey, we want to purchase the naming rights to your husband's legacy. It is essentially a municipal sponsorship of a human being's final resting place.
It is highly commercial, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, Denver was a rapidly modernizing city in 1917.
That is true.
They were transitioning from this rugged mining town into a major cosmopolitan tourist hub.
Okay, so they saw an opportunity.
Exactly. They understood the enduring romantic power of the Wild West mythos. They knew the era of the frontier cowboy was fading into legend.
Right.
And they wanted to literally anchor the ultimate symbol of that era within their own city limits forever. It was a very calculated investment in tourism.
Well, Louisa, needing the funds to settle his estate and basically survive, she accepts the arrangement.
She did.
And Denver does not waste a single second capitalizing on their new investment. They organize a grand send-off that is just staggering in its logistical scale.
Oh, it was massive. On January 14th, 1917, they paraded his casket through the streets of Denver right to the Colorado State Capitol building.
Wow.
Over 25,000 mourners viewed the procession.
That is a huge crowd for back then.
It really is. They held an open casket funeral at the Denver Elks Lodge. And when it came time for the official burial on Lookout Mountain, over 20,000 people attended.
Just think about the sheer logistics of that.
Yeah.
Moving 20,000 people up a winding dirt mountain road in the middle of winter in 1917.
It was an absolute triumph of public relations for Denver.
It really was. But while all this fanfare is happening in Colorado, the residents back in Cody, Wyoming are receiving the news.
And their reaction is entirely different.
Completely different.
I mean, they were expecting their founder to come home. When the town learned about the $20,000 arrangement with Denver, they were stunned.
Yeah, and this wasn't just, injured civic pride. Buffalo Bill's closest friends knew his true heart.
They did.
3 men in particular were super motivated by this. There's the local town undertaker and 2 of Bill's dearest friends, Fred Richard and Ned Frost.
These men had shared campfires, hunts, and decades of history with him.
Right.
They knew unequivocally that Buffalo Bill had explicitly shared his final wishes. He wanted to be laid to rest on Cedar Mountain just outside of Cody with its sweeping views of the valleys and the town he built.
So these 3 friends look at Denver's municipal contract and they decide they're going to do something about it.
And this is where the story takes a turn.
It really does. Here's where it gets really interesting. The timing lines up in the most cinematic way possible.
Yeah, you could not write this better.
Right around this exact time, an unclaimed local ranch hand in Cody peacefully passes away. And it just so happens this gentleman bears an uncanny physical resemblance to William F. Cody.
It's the kind of historical coincidence that completely changes the course of events.
Totally. So the 3 friends, Fred, Ned, and the undertaker, they take this ranch hand and they carefully trim his beard to perfectly match Buffalo Bill's iconic facial hair.
Wow.
Yeah. They load the gentleman into the undertaker's transport and they set off on a 2.5-day journey through the winter elements, heading back to Denver.
Think about this from a mechanical standpoint for a second. It is like a meticulously planned caper.
It is.
Driving a wagon for 2.5 days in the deep winter with a secret passenger.
Yeah, and ironically, the freezing temperatures that prevented Bill's burial in the first place actually acted as a natural preservation method for the ranch hand during that long journey south.
That is true. It highlights a really fascinating cultural divide. You have Denver, representing the modern bureaucratic world where money and written contracts dictate reality.
Right.
Then you have these 3 friends from Wyoming, representing the old code of the West. In their paradigm, a handshake and a promise made to a friend completely superseded any official city paperwork. They weren't committing a slight against Denver. They were fulfilling a sacred, unbreakable promise to a brother.
So they arrive in Denver and present themselves at Ollinger's mortuary as grieving friends who traveled hundreds of miles just to pay their final respects.
Right, very believable.
And the mortuary allows them into the receiving vault. They say their goodbyes, they tell the staff they're heading back to Wyoming, but they don't actually leave town.
No, they wait for the cover of night.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, mortuaries in 1917 weren't high-security facilities with cameras and biometric locks.
Definitely not.
They were businesses, often with simple latch doors or maybe a night watchman who could be easily avoided or persuaded to look the other way.
So they sneak back into the mortuary late at night and execute the switch.
Incredible.
They actually swap Buffalo Bill with the look-alike ranch hand, but getting the body out of the mortuary was really only the first half of the operation. The real logistical danger was the long journey home.
Oh, for sure. They're driving back to Cody, and the paranoia really sets in.
Yeah, I bet.
Every shadow on the road looks like a Denver police officer. They are terrified that the mortuary staff in Denver might look closely at the ranch hand the next morning and realize he's missing that specific spark.
Right, or that the weight is slightly off or the features aren't quite right.
Exactly.
So they realize they need to ensure Denver never looks closely at that casket. They need a massive diversion.
And they engineered one of the most spectacular misdirections imaginable.
They really did. They get back to Cody, and instead of quietly finishing their mission, they go on this highly visible tour.
Yeah,
They visit all 13 saloons in the town.
they're teen saloons.
Yeah. They talk to the passionate townsfolk who are still mourning their founder, and they rile them up, saying, hey, we need to go to Denver and bring our boy home.
They completely mobilized the passion of the town. They organized a highly enthusiastic caravan of over 350 men.
That is a lot of people.
It is. And this wasn't a stealthy operation. It was a loud, boisterous procession rolling out of Cody on horseback and in wagons.
Yeah, loudly proclaiming to the world they were heading to Denver to take back Buffalo Bill's body.
Think about the noise and the spectacle of 350 motivated men riding south.
Word of this caravan travels incredibly fast. It hits the Denver police and absolute panic ensues.
Oh, total panic.
Denver authorities rush north to the Wyoming border to intercept them, and to make absolutely sure their $20,000 tourist attraction is permanently secure, Denver officials go up to Lookout Mountain and seal the gravesite with 20 tons of solid concrete.
20 tons. I mean, mixing and pouring 20 tons of concrete on a mountain in the winter is an extraordinary industrial undertaking.
It really is.
It was an engineering feat born purely out of municipal panic.
Meanwhile, the caravan from Cody meets the law enforcement at the border. The authorities turn them around.
Right.
The townsfolk head back to Cody, acting defeated, completely believing they failed to bring their friend home.
But according to Bob Richard, the descendant of Fred Richard, the covert mission was already a total success.
Yes.
While everyone was completely focused on the caravan, Buffalo Bill was quietly and peacefully laid to rest on private property up on Cedar Mountain, exactly where he wanted to be.
I have to ask you, what is the most brilliant part of this entire plan? The physical switch at the mortuary, or the psychological genius of using 350 of your neighbors as a massive distraction?
The distraction is the true masterpiece here.
It really is.
They weaponized Denver's own financial anxiety against them. By creating this massive, highly visible threat, they forced Denver to pour that concrete,
Right.
which essentially guaranteed that no one would ever be able to open that casket again to verify who was actually inside.
Yeah.
They used Denver's own resources to permanently hide their tracks. And this raises an important question for you, the listener. When we look at history, what dictates the truth? Is it the official, documented city record that sits in a filing cabinet in Denver? Or is it the deeply held belief of the community that actually understood the man?
It really blurs the line between historical fact and living legend. And the amazing thing is, this legend is fully alive today.
It is.
The exact location of his resting place on Cedar Mountain remains a wonderfully closely guarded secret. It is kept on private property, safely preserved, with that expansive view of the valley.
You can really feel that enduring spirit when you visit. Buffalo Bill helped found one of the most unique towns in the West.
He did.
You can go there today, hike Cedar Mountain yourself, and look out over those same vistas. You can tour the historic Irma Hotel, which he built and named after his daughter. You are walking directly in the footsteps of a legend.
Which leaves you with an incredible thought to take with you. We live in an era of rapidly advancing technology, things like ground-penetrating radar and DNA analysis. If anyone ever decided to technologically analyze that site on Lookout Mountain, Denver's entire claim could potentially dissolve.
That is so true.
By trying so hard to legally own and protect the legacy of Buffalo Bill, Denver may have accidentally built a world-famous 20-ton concrete shrine dedicated entirely to the idea of the everyman cowboy.
An unnamed ranch hand who just happened to have a great beard is the ultimate Western twist. A massive municipal monument to a myth, while the man himself rests peacefully overlooking his own town.
So what does this all mean? Well, it means the spirit of the West isn't just in the history books. It is a living, breathing thing in Cody Yellowstone.
It really is.
It's in the loyalty of friends, the cleverness of a grand mission, and the enduring power of a great story. Buffalo Bill gave us an adventure that never truly ends, a mystery that invites you to come and discover it for yourself.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Cody Yellowstone Uncovered.
Catch you later, wild ones.